Welcome back, everyone. Tori Sandoval was just 2 years old when she died last April. Her autopsy showed she died from hypothermia, severe dehydration, and malnutrition. Before she died, her foster parents sent a letter to Child Protective Services warning that Tori's birth mother was a danger to Tori. Tori's foster parents, Kelly and Terry Sedgwick, are with us now, as well as lawyer and Fox legal analyst Robin Sachs. And the question, of course, becomes how? I mean, that's what everyone wants to know. How did this happen? How did she slip through the cracks?
Well, the system failed her in this situation. We tried, and Kelly begged them in our living room not to take her because she knew of the possibilities of what might happen.
Can you tell us about her and about the family that she was sent back to?
Well, I mean, we came in fostering her, and if, reunification was possible, then that would be the way it went, but it was not looking that way through the whole 8 months that we had her. So when all of a sudden everything switched around, then they just decided that they were going to send her back, and it was not safe. And none of the other children, her siblings, none of them were back with the parents.
So there were 11 children?
Well, Tori was number 9, and then after Tori, she had 2 more after. She's had 2 after.
Yeah. But you guys begged.
Different dads. We begged. Yes. I begged the social worker. I begged her attorney. Our agency that we're with, she wrote a letter to the presiding judge begging them to look at this case because when we were in court, when they released her, nobody spoke for her. Like, she had no voice at all.
When you begged, what did you say? Because you had a feeling of what could happen.
I did. I said when she ends up on the front page of the LA Times. And we did.
She was on the front page.
She was on the front page.
And Robin, this is where I want to bring you in, because I do know with the foster care system, reunification is the goal when possible. But sometimes, I think sometimes it's the goal to the detriment of the child.
It is, and when you ask what the failure was before, I mean, there's so many failures. You have systemic failure with the Department of Children and Family Service, Minors Council, the court, all the people that could have done something to prevent it from an agency perspective. But at the end of the day, these parents are the ones who are really responsible. And thankfully, on Friday, the DA's office decided to file charges against the biological mom. And
well, that's all well and good, but that doesn't bring her back.
No, it doesn't, but I want to make sure that we're updated on where we are in the case, and it doesn't bring her back. But there are people, I mean, and there is a system that always favors natural parents, that favors reunification, and that is all well and good, and that is the goal. Certainly it makes sense to have kids with their biological parents, but not to the detriment of them, and not when it's not in their best interest.
There were so many children, and the rest of them were not with the parents.
Right, they were not returned because they had a voice, and they could say, we don't want to go back. But because she didn't have, and I think that's part of that's why we've created Tori's Torch, because we want her light and her voice to continue.
Well, but they're bringing a good point. What they're saying here is that because she was 2 years old and she was a newborn baby when she was put into foster care, she doesn't have a voice to be able to say, this is what I want. The court can't hear what she has to say because they're not going to even appreciate and value what she has to say.
But wouldn't the court look at what has happened with the other kids and the fact that they had not been returned?
They should. They should, but they really do look at each kid individually, and that's why you see in the foster care system one kid going to one house, one kid back with a family, one going to a grandparent, and there really isn't this reason of looking at the whole system.
When Tori went back home, could you still see her? Did you know anything that was going on?
No.
No, I had stayed in touch with her grandmother, not her biological grandmother, but one that loved her dearly, that has her sisters and brother, and so I kind of knew, and they would be back at court back and forth, so I kind of knew she wasn't doing very good, and
then how?
But they
you
were
didn't
watching
know until the LA Times?
No, I knew. We found out. The grandmother called me 2 days after Easter.
Robin, how can we fix this?
Well, I mean, first of all, we want Minors Council, who are there and assigned and appointed to represent minors, should really spend some time looking at the scenario and really advocate for the best interest of children. The courts need to look at the entire situation. I mean, in this case, what seemed to be to me was this was a power ploy case. This was we want to win over the foster kids. We don't really care about Tori. We really don't care about what's in her best interest, but because it becomes a bartering trip that we see so often where kids are being used in order to effectuate a point. This was was a case where it was a domestic violence scenario that was the background that had her removed from the house. So that the components in domestic violence are power and struggle. So when you start seeing a kid being used as a ping pong and not really being there because they really want the kid, but just more for their scorecard, you've got to stop and wonder.
I'm so sorry for.
But on
Yeah.
the other side of it, we have adopted a little girl through the foster care system. Her name's Jocelyn. And we did have other babies prior to Tori. And the system has worked for them. So we want people to foster. We want people to get involved.
They need, I mean, they really need good, loving foster, homes that parents that will, that will speak for them when their attorneys and their social workers aren't.
And the system should listen to these parents.
And yes, and they
that's
don't
what-
listen to foster parents a lot. And it needs to be like a team effort to do what's best for the child, where a lot of times it's like a power struggle between.
And that's what Tori's Torch is all about. It's about giving foster children a voice.
Okay. All right, Terry.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for coming in. Really appreciate it. And Robin, of course, always appreciate your perspective.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.